All right, and finally, also from Reddit, Gravity Fighter asks, the big breakthrough in the supplement world was creatine, and everyone's always looking for the next creatine. One of the major breakthroughs in powerlifting training in the powerlifting training world was through Mike T's RTS. If there is to be another major breakthrough in powerlifting training, which area of training do you see it being in? Um, and I think I think if we could develop better screening tools to more efficiently personalize and individualize training, I think that that would be kind of the next big step forward. Because I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That's what good coaches do. They motivate people to work hard and they figure out what works well on a individual athlete by athlete basis. Like those are the two kind of most important skills for coaches, I think. Um, but ultimately, when you're trying to individualize training, especially if you're dealing with people who are relatively well trained already, is you're trying to make fairly precise inferences from pretty noisy data. So if you're dealing with someone who, like, an excellent training cycle, they might put 10, 15 pounds on their squat. Um, but also, just day to day performance fluctuates. So, their one rep max squat might vary by 15 pounds day to day. The difference between a good training, like a great training cycle, and not a great training cycle where they don't actually get any stronger, you might not even be able to tell that over the course of a single training cycle because bad training cycle, but just a good testing day at the end. Cool. Looks like you put 15 pounds on your squat. Excellent training cycle where you have an average testing day. You put 15 pounds on your squat. Ultimately you're dealing with somewhat noisy measurements, looking for relatively small changes, and generally looking for pretty specialized training interventions. Like, if you're trying to figure out like the optimal level of training volume for someone, or like if a particular accessory lift is working well for them, like those are relatively those are questions that lend themselves to relatively precise answers, and it can be hard to find the signal in the noise. um, and ultimately, the total pool of questions you could ask and total training interventions you could try on an individual is virtually infinite. So I think if we had better screening tools, and maybe it's based on like genetics. Once genetic screening becomes better, maybe it's based on like, I don't know, whatever else. Who the fuck knows? But I think if we had tools where, like, at baseline, before going through a multi-month or multi-year process of trying to figure out the optimal approach to training for an individual, if you could just do some basic screening and get them pretty close pretty quickly, um, I think one, more people would be exposed to training that is more appropriate for them and their unique physiology, which would be great. And also, functionally, it would allow people to reach a higher training age sooner. Like, I think a lot of people have the experience of training for a while, kind of getting decent results, and then finally hitting on a style of training that works really well for them. And that's kind of what allows them to take a step to the next level of kind of whatever they're training for. But if you could just start there at whatever style of training lets you get to that next level, functionally you could be training for a year, but be in the same general place that you may have taken 5 years to get to otherwise. So, when you're dealing with powerlifting, you want people to get pretty fucking strong pretty young so that they have time to build and mature. Um, and so, yeah, if you could basically skip that period that a lot of people experience where their training time isn't wasted, but it's not used super productively, um, I think that that would be really valuable. So, yeah, better tools to screen and individualize training better for individuals from the jump. Um, Again, I'm not totally sure what that would look like, but I think if something like that were to present itself, that would be a pretty big step forward.
Yeah, it would be cool if we could get some like really large powerlifting programs uh, to kind of get on board with some meticulous record keeping,
Hmm.
to just start developing like an enormous database of some key characteristics, general trajectories in terms of progression for the lifter. I mean, to get to some of these individualized nuances, the need for data is pretty overwhelming. I
Hmm.
mean, just the sheer volume of data that would be needed to support any kind of thorough statistical analysis is, it would take quite a feat, quite an
Hmm.
effort to make that viable. It would be doable, but logistically it would take some serious buy-in.
Yeah,
But it'd be very, very cool if someone were to organize something that sounds anything like that. That'd be cool.
absolutely.